Space. 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 Why are people so interested in it? What shape is our planet? What is tidal force? What do they do on the International Space Station? A possible dystopian future for Mars? All of this and much more feature in this video. So hello fellas, when you think about space, what are kind of your first thoughts?
The world's greatest joke. Why does space suck?
I don't know why the space suck.
Because it's a vacuum!
Haha!
And I'm already switching off the internet.
It's just curious to know what is out there and kind of seeing sort of different worlds to them we're used to be fair.
Great.
What are your thoughts on space, Mike?
But I like looking at it and like reading stuff about what some scientist predicts about this, that and the other, and the potential end of all our lives when something horrible comes along. Brings a little bit of love to my little black heart.
What do you like about space, bro?
Well, as a space noid and as a member of the glorious Republic of Zeon. No, but it also space is interesting, you know, as a genius once coined it, space, the final frontier.
Space, the final frontier.
It's that region of existence that we have yet to really properly explore.
It's one of those as well, at some point as a race, we kind of will need to, for when we inevitably wreck the planet. So the Earth, why do you think it is so good as a planet for human beings?
It's kind of the only place we can live at the moment.
Well, to be that guy, it is the galaxy's favourite reality show, Earth.
The greatest universal reality show of all time.
Earth?
It's kind of got all the perfect elements you kind of need for life, like kind of oxygen, water, sunlight. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. It's kind of good for sustaining life. It's like perfect for living, I would say. Did you know, some Earth facts for you, that the Earth has a diameter of roughly 8,000 miles, or if you want it in kilometres, that's 13,000. It says here is round because gravity pulls matter into a ball, but it's not perfectly round.
Shaped like a burger.
It's apparently, according to this article, an O-plate spheroid because its spin causes it to be squashed at its poles and swollen at its equator.
See, that's the thing though, because even then that terminology is confusing because most people couldn't describe that particular shape.
Basically, I watched the Neil deGrasse Tyson video on this earlier actually about the equator and so on. The closer you are to the equator, the less you actually weigh physically, if that makes sense, because of how gravity works on it. So where the North Pole is and the South Pole, it's all flat land, but where the equator is, like, that's the bit where it's like pinching out and squishing, which is why we're shaped like a burger rather than a ball. I probably haven't described it as great as he did, but
if it's Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's had, was it 30 years, and you've probably had doing science, and you've probably had.
It was an 18-minute video, so I wouldn't really call me an expert.
I do like the Earth as well. It kind of has the right amount of water. Like, water covers the planet sort of roughly about 71% of its surface. And kind of obviously most of that is the oceans. And kind of the atmosphere atmosphere as well is good because it contains large amounts of oxygen, and we produce, kind of as humans, large amounts of carbon dioxide, so it's kind of perfect to give and receive, to use a metaphor. Axis run through the Earth, see, obviously North and South Pole, as you said. It takes the Earth 23 point, that's the important bit, ladies and gents, 23.934 hours to complete a rotation on its axis. And did you know, to the orbit the Sun, this is a good fact, it takes about 365.26 days to complete a full orbit.
Almost as if it's about as long as a year.
Yeah, which is why leap year is actually longer.
Why does the Earth get seasons? Does anyone want to explain that?
What it is because the Earth is spinning. The way it spins is it doesn't spin like a Beyblade, you know, horizontally. It's sort of on a diagonal. This is a really terrible explanation of how shit.
No, but I've enjoyed it. Keep going.
But basically, the idea is because of the way that the planet's tilted when it rotates. This is a gross oversimplification, by the way. Because the Earth is tilted, it's not, you know, it's not horizontal. It's slightly tilted. Basically, the Earth sort of splits itself into two, so you get the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Basically, the reason why the Australians can go out to the beach on Christmas Day and cook a turkey on a barbecue is because when we have winter in the northern hemisphere, which is basically July through to about December, realistically, it's winter in the northern hemisphere here, where in the southern hemisphere, it's actually summer.
Yeah, so we have sort of our summers kind of due into about August-ish, while the Australians will have their summer December to about March-ish.
Yeah, which is really nice, because if you've ever wanted to sit in the sun on Christmas Day, you always go to Australia for the Christmas spree.
It would also kind of explain as well as why when you get countries on the equator, it tends to be sort of hot all year round, purely because it's probably just a barrier from the northern and southern hemispheres.
Because weather extremes towards the equators are worse, because obviously all of radiation and all the light from the sun hit that specific part because it bulges out. So the further north or south you are, the less extreme weather tends to be.
Which is good.
Meteorology.
Yeah. So
And the equator.
back to good old atmosphere and stuff you get in a football match.
Or a concert.
Would you like to have a guess what is in the atmosphere?
Drugs. A lot of drugs.
Really bad curry burn.
A lot of methane.
Did you know the Earth's atmosphere is roughly 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen, with trace amounts of water, argon, not the supermarket / store, carbon dioxide, and other gases.
So what you're saying is the air is effectively just nitrous oxide.
Essentially, so the atmosphere is 78% of it is nitrogen, according
So
to
what
this
you're
study.
saying is, at some point, in some way, I can trick the Earth.
Oh yeah.
No, the Earth is a weird place, you know, and we really haven't explored most of it yet. You know, we've explored within reason, but we can't get down as far as we'd like to go.
It's like the oceans itself. Then I read a stat somewhere that we've only discovered, was it 5% of oceans, or
It's somewhere between like 5 to 20%.
and we
Yeah,
still.
mostly because we couldn't survive going all the way down to the very bottom to check.
Because pressure
prob-
falling down
yeah.
on me.
So the Earth gravity is perfect for humans because it's just the right amount, which we don't get squashed with oblivion, or it's kind of just enough for us to not get murdered.
Almost as if it's perfect conditions for life to exist.
How long do you reckon the Earth could be how it is before climate change gets a bit too serious?
Well, luckily for us, you know, because of the acid rain in the 80s, most people went, oh shit, that's an actual issue, we should probably deal with that. And, you know, most countries are now taking reasonable approaches to it, but...
Yeah. Sure they are.
You know, you can't have it all in one go. There are individuals on the planet who want it all done in like a week. You can't do it in a week. It takes time.
When you think about the moon, what are your thoughts on it?
So the moon, they are the best Pokemon games ever fucking created. No lie. No, I kid.
The
No,
fact that people made a cheese, that was
I like the idea. It sounds delicious.
I would love if the moon was made out of cheese. That'd be absolutely best.
just like a giant Dairy Lee dunker in the sky.
I do like, was it the moon that apparently the moon can affect sort of the tides on Earth, and there's some actual science behind it.
Yeah, it also affects people's mental state and so on.
About the moon's effect on the Earth's ocean, the combination of the Earth's gravity and sort of the gravitational pull of the moon sort of creates a phenomenon called tidal force, which sort of causes the ocean tides to change. And I think it's because it says the moon's mass is smaller than the mass of the Earth, sort of about 80 times smaller, and it still has gravity. Sort of when the Earth rotates, the area closest to the moon experiences its sort of gravitational pull.
And that's how tides were.
Yeah.
I like that tidal force. It sounds like a TV show that used to be on during the 90s.
It sounds like a Yu-Gi-Oh booster pack.
A slightly quicker explanation is that bit in Bruce Almighty.
Lab
No,
Rock.
because there's a bit where he pulls the moon down and
Yeah.
it floods so much of the world.
Yeah, the
Just because he was
irony.
horny.
I know, a movie with consequences. What a world.
Would you like to hear some reasons why people believe the moon landings were faked?
Go on.
So the first one is the flag, because it's sort of in the footage, it's sort of swaying a bit. They believe because there's no gravity on the moon, it shouldn't be doing that.
There is gravity on the moon, but it's a very small amount. But I've always assumed it was a telescopic arm and just this sort of very awkward bending of it. But it was the first time anyone had actually been to the moon, so it's not like people got there and went, wow, we know everything about it. It's the first time they went there and went, we don't know how stuff works out here.
surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder.
There's no
Yeah, it's
Google
like when you
or
go
whatever.
to another country and you don't know what the fuck's gonna happen when you get off that thing.
So another reason why they believe the moon landings were faked was the lack of stars. To put the argument simply, is that there are stars in space, but stars don't feature in any of the moon landing footage they're claiming.
Yeah, because you have to use specific techniques to do it. You can't just... It's like looking out at the night sky. Yeah, you could take a picture on your phone, but if you take a picture on your phone just pointing up towards the moon, you're not like to see the stars in the picture.
This thing called editing, you do kind of need to adapt it, and I'm pretty sure they weren't using Premiere Pro CC back when the moon was
Yeah,
landing.
I didn't have many advanced techniques, and I'm pretty sure their cameras all had a megapixel of 0.1. As in, there was no megapixel, it was just some pixels.
So that argument's sort of a bit stupid, isn't it? Because obviously the cameras we have nowadays is sort of a lot better than the cameras they had during the 60s and 70s when they were on the moon. The third reason why people believe the moon landings were faked was the direction of the shadows. So they're saying the moon landing was faked because the direction or angle of the shadows of things in the footage are pointing the wrong way, and others point out that there are a number of things that light from the sun could have been bouncing off.
Another thing of people, we haven't been there, and it's the first time going there, we don't know how light reacts in different environments. In an Earth environment, you have the atmosphere, you have, the general things we're aware of, but on the moon, there's like no recorded history or footage or any knowledge of how light reacts to the moon. The materials of the surface are completely different.
There is also another theory that they weren't physically able to take pictures because of the vacuum of space not allowing you to move your hand. Kind of bullshit, because that would mean things wouldn't move out there, but...
Another reason they believe that the moon landings were faked was, quote, the lack of a blast crater. So some say that the impact of landing ought to have created sort of a significant crater. But others say that the impact wouldn't have been that huge given sort of the way sort of the vessel had landed on the moon.
I don't want to be that guy, but how many people who come up with these theories have knowledge of how rockets work?
A lot of them don't, to be honest.
Like, here's the thing, right?
Apparently they all have PhDs.
Apparently so, because when a space shuttle hits the moon, it just makes a giant blast crater like you'd see in like Dragon Ball Z.
Let me just check some of their information. Let's just get onto Instagram.
It hurts that excuse. I'm like, that's literally not how, gravity physics or any sort of, rudimentary knowledge even works. Firstly, there's a term, I think it's retro rockets or micro rockets, and basically the idea is you slow the descent down. Because if you were to effectively pile drive any sort of probe into the planet, you're going to kill everyone on board and wreck all your very nice machinery.
Because gravity is friendly like that.
When they put the flag down for the first time, took the picture, went off, sort of when the spacecraft took off from the moon's surface, sort of the force around it anyway blew the flag over. So, and sort of in later moon missions, they had to sort of space the flag out a bit further from the spacecraft. So when they took off in future missions, it wouldn't topple it over. But I do did read somewhere that apparently all the flags on the moon from all the previous sort of Apollo missions are apparently all white due to the sort of sunlight that's been hitting it and stuff, and sort of the...
I've heard of that. Radiation.
So they believe that one of the moon landing was faked because of sort of the shot when Neil Armstrong is getting off like the vessel for the first time, and they're wondering who filmed them going onto the moon.
Hold on. Imagine, and roll with me now. I know you guys are really smart, right? Imagine, right, if somebody went outside the spacecraft and put a camera down on the moon and then walked back in and said, you know what, this will make a great shot.
Or maybe there was a camera on a stick that was sticking out far away, similar to, say, what's the thing that kids have? A selfie stick, just kind of poking out, just facing back at the thing. It's amazing how people think a selfie stick is something that's only existed for a smartphone. Like, that shit could have been around.
The moon itself kind of travels on its own axis, just a bit like our planet, and kind of takes roughly about the same amount of time to make a full rotation as it does for its full orbit. And depending on what kind of night it is, you can sort of see sort of either a full moon, a half moon, a quarter of the moon, and sort of other sort of different sides of the moon.
The moon, that's the sun reflecting off the moon.
Yeah, that's kind of a good way of how the moon gets its light, isn't it? It's from the sun reflecting it, as you said.
Well, some people say it reflects through. I've always sort of had the theory of it sort of just goes around, and it's sort of just it's sort of like if you have a ball and you put a light over the ball, it just sort of goes all around it.
Everyone have a guess how long it takes the moon to travel all the way around the Earth to complete its orbit?
30 days.
So it's just under 30 days. It's about 27.3 days. Sort of in the future, they were sort of planning to go back to the moon and kind of use the moon to get to Mars.
Yeah, they're going to use the gravitational slingshot effect, where you basically use the rotation of the moon or any planet, and you effectively slingshot ships using the gravity.
For those that aren't aware of the International Space Station, it's sort of a large sort of spacecraft. It orbits the Earth, and it kind of serves as a home to sort of astronauts and crews to sort of live, so they can sort of conduct experiments to see how humans function in space.
I mean, there's also other reasons. Continuing on the concept of things into space, because humans just like littering space. But no, it's great to learn about how humans will adapt to a space-based environment. Obviously, hopefully, when we all go up there in the future in much bigger ships, the space issue is not, well, the lack of space is not really going to be an issue.
Would you like to hear some facts about the International Space Station?
Go on.
So apparently, it sort of orbits the Earth at sort of an average altitude of approximately sort of 250 miles. They reckon it travels about 17,500 miles. So it sort of orbits the Earth every 90 minutes. Do we know any history behind the International Space Station? Sort of how it was built?
Basically, it was sort of the continuation of sending module-based areas for humans to exist in, because obviously the Russians had Mir beforehand, then the US had Skylab before that, and basically the idea was, in the name of international cooperation and to totally not war up there, the idea was to effectively continue to do research experiments in space by using the ISS to do that. And it was sort of between, well, at the time, 5 space agencies, because I think it was NASA, the Russians, might have been the Europeans, and the Japanese as well.
But I do like, kind of, to be an astronaut, to go up there, you kind of have to be sort of very skinny, kind of in shape stuff for obvious good reasons.
Basically, if you're a fighter pilot, you're already pretty much in there, because it's just one step up from there.
When NASA sort of first started sending people up into space, they kind of, all the initial crews tended to be people that worked in for like the American Air Force and kind of other parts of the American Army and sort of Navy.
Makes sense, because obviously they're much more used to, you know, extreme G forces.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, like, because did you also know that, like, the Russians and the Americans had 2 different ways for people to breathe in space? Like, the Russians based it off of how air is, so 99% oxygen, 1% nitrogen, and the Americans had just pure oxygen, which is really fucking weird that everybody just went completely random methods to breathe in space.
I think the ISS is using the Russian method. It's basically generating a form of Earth-like air, but in a pressurized environment.
Well, that's kind of how the Russians had it before.
Yeah, they're much
There
smarter.
was this thing where, like, during, was it the 60s or the 70s? Well, it must have been 70s, obviously, but an American and a Russian ship rocket both docked, and they had to build a special kind of airlock for them to acclimatise to each other's atmosphere.
I do like when they have to do sort of spacewalks, because I think someone compared it to it's a bit like your car getting an MOT. It's the kind of have to do regular sort of repairs to kind of keep it going and sort of make sure it can continue its operations and doesn't like get buggered.
Yeah, the difference between an MOT and actually having to repair, you know, a very high-tech piece of humanity's first steps into space is the fact that if you drop a spanner, good luck getting that back.
It would already be back in Kazakhstan before you could get anywhere near it.
It's a very difficult environment to work in, and I think there is a hilarious meme on the internet where they're talking about a GoPro on a spacewalk and how it's meant to be recording if the red light's on, and it's apparently not on. But I think it was a joke because they couldn't figure out how to get the GoPro to work in space, which is like the worst time to do it.
For them to train the astronauts to do the spacewalk, they sort of do it like it's, have you seen this? They sort of train them in big sort of swimming pools in Texas.
Yeah, because obviously water is, well, in terms of moving in water, it's a lot like moving in a vacuum. I mean, there's reasons they do it.
Have you ever seen sort of the space toilets up there?
You mean the vacuum things?
Sort of that's kind of the space. Have you seen that? It's kind of
It looks like a McDonald's milkshake making thing from like the founders.
My first it's more like a McDonald's sink.
And this is modern technology in space.
But I do remember watching sort of an interview with some of the astronauts, and they were sort of saying if you're not very accurate with your sort of AMGs in the space toilet, it could have it's not very good for the next person to visit the lavatory.
To be fair, but once we figure out how to make like anti-gravity stuff where we can build our own version of gravity, you can just have a regular toilet in there.
Actually, a space shower. I found pictures of when they were showering in Skylab, which is hilarious. When they were washing in, you know, space shower, which is fantastic.
It looks like a dog when he's just jumping out of the car window.
Here's a more modern picture how they use water in space.
I've seen that sort of a bit like sort of the squeezy tube they use to sort of wash hair.
See, they have to set the Bear Grylls approach.
Overcome, adapt and survive.
Pretty much, yeah.
I reckon it's possible. Kind of at the moment, we're like at the awkward kind of, not medieval stages, but you know, the times of pirates, you know, like where we were reliant on sail and so on, because we couldn't understand how engines and shit work. But at some point, we will get to the level where we can travel out that far. I just don't think it'll be as like how science fiction describes it.
I think with it as well.
Like, it'll be something we're probably not all.
I think I agree with that, to be fair. And it's kind of the technology we have at the minute. It's kind of, was it the average human life expectancy is probably about 80 years. Just travelling everywhere takes so long. Most people probably wouldn't even make like a trip to the next inhabitable planet for human beings. I think it's probably just wait until technology just gets better.
Between Earth and Mars now, in terms of the technology as it is it like the trip is still a year, and that's just getting there. Imagine trying to travel out further, because I mean they did the math with the fastest plane that's ever been produced and used. You know, the SR-71 Blackbird. You would travel in a Blackbird to the centre of our galaxy. It'd take you somewhere in the region of like 250,000 years to do it.
Yeah, see, that's why I reckon there's a chance that for a while it might go like how the film Alien does it. You know, where they got the sleeping pods, cryotubes, or whatever they're called in. Those will be necessary at some point.
The Voyager spacecraft sort of left Earth in the 80s, and was it only just left the solar system?
It was like the late 70s, and it was literally 1 and 2 were literally launched about 16 days after one another. So basically, they've been effectively flying out our solar system since the 70s. I mean, you can see that's like nearly 50 years to now, and they're only just leaving our solar system. The basic idea of the Voyager space probes were to effectively study like the outer solar system, so sort of anything beyond Jupiter, basically anything beyond the asteroid belt, really. But they figured they might as well just keep going because, you know, they'll get the data.
So when do you think humans will sort of first step foot on Mars?
I'm going to say it's whenever Elon or whenever the world's 2 richest men decide that they want to share being emperors.
Imagine Jeff Bezos.
No, that's what my theory is. That they'll travel to Mars and, oh yeah, you can come down and work here. Or what, you think you're going to get paid? Oh, no, you're going to be working in the mines, my friend.
In the Mars Fulfillment Center.
The Mars Fulfillment
Center.
Center.
Fuck, that's even worse. Why didn't I think of that?
The Mars Fulfillment. They're gonna
Imagine some
have
poor
like
bastard wrapping up bricks.
Nah, more like Mars rocks to send them back to Earth. Can you imagine the Amazon Prime on having to send your stuff back to Earth? Oh, it'll be with you in a year, but if you've got Prime, it'll be 6 months.
But they'll still claim, oh yeah, Amazon Prime Sports, we'll get it to you in a day from Mars, and be like, it's bullshit. Yeah, it's gonna turn up in a day.
Oh, that's when like there'd just be like a comet strike in your back garden, and there's your package, completely on fire and smashed to shit.
Little giant blast crater.
Well, actually, your house would be completely gone.
Sorry.
But your new iPhone has arrived.
Your new iPhone is now a smouldering pile in the ground.
But we held up to our end of the bargain, delivery within a day.
Welcome to Mars News you may not have heard about.
The thing about black holes is we don't know a lot about them. We've observed them and we can see them shifting, matter in the universe, but no one's ever really been for a black hole and sort of, lived to tell the tale.
According to the theory, you get stretched to a point where it just cuts your atoms into pieces, so you literally snap completely.
They reckon that the gravitational pull of it is so strong that nothing, not even light, can sort of escape it. And they're saying sort of a black hole surface called the event horizon sort of defines the boundary where sort of the velocity needed to escape exceeds the speed of light, which is sort of the speed limit of the cosmos. Sort of even matter and radiation falls in can't get out of it either. Only recently we've only sort of a very blurry picture seen sort of what a black hole looks like.
It took it was somewhere in the region of 1 million lines of code to be able to take the first observable pictures of an actual black hole, and that whole thing is it's just a very annoying politically driven storm of who did what now, instead of actually realising what an accomplishment that move actually is. There's the concept of just as there's black holes, there's also white holes, which are sort of the inverse, where they sort of spew out matter sort of like a universal sewer pipe.
Even though, in modern standards, we're like, oh, that picture looks rubbish, it's still an incredible bit of science. We can sort of see sort of the outer sort of light sort of getting sucked into it.
I would imagine what we observed in that image has probably already gone, given the speed of light is a thing.
What is it? The farthest reaches of space, Neil deGrasse Tyson explained, 90 billion light years away, the furthest reaches of space. So
humans haven't even developed being able to go for 1 million miles an hour yet, and the speed of light is infinitely faster than that.
Yeah, even Stephen Hawking said if you got all the fuel on the planet and built a ship to travel it would take at least 2 years for it to get up to that speed. So we've got a lot to work on in those respects.
Space travel, why is it so dangerous?
Well, there's not really any safety to it.
If you've seen the sort of pictures of the ISS and some of the plating on it after just coming into contact with debris the size of a flick of paint, yeah, you can understand why it's so dangerous, because of obviously all the speeding object. It's pretty lethal, to be fair.
Yeah, there's also the fact that if something goes wrong, you're pretty much fucked. There is no rescue team coming to save you.
Well, I mean, there is, but you'll probably be dead before they get there.
I don't think why space travel is so dangerous is like the radiation levels. It must be just on a level that's kind of human, because was it on Earth naturally there's just very radiation is in a normal room, but it's kind of a very minimal level that isn't dangerous to human life, but kind of because there's obviously radiation all around us and stuff, and probably sort of the radiation in space is just like at a different level
actually, because it also sort of affects the ISS as well. On Earth there's a scale of measurement for radiation, and I forget what the name of it is, but on Earth it's 0.1 if you just sit on their surface. If you go on a plane for a couple of hours, it's 0.2, 0.3-ish, depending on your height. You only do it for a couple of hours. If you're on the ISS, I think it's somewhere in the region of anywhere between 0.5 and 1.5, and you have to deal with that constantly. So yeah, don't be surprised if you get cancer from space.
I think another thing I've got here is the only humans known to have died of exposure to vacuum in space are 3 members of the Soyuz 11 spacecraft. So it was 3
I
gentlemen.
thought you were going to say the Challenger, but
No.
They get into space, but these guys, what happened to them is a part of their spacecraft, or one of the doors, came undone during re-entry,
unexpectedly opens at sort of an altitude of 168 kilometres, which is sort of
no
551 sort of feet, and then which it says here it sort of caused sort of a rapid sort of depressurisation, which like subsequently sort of killed all of them instantly. I think another sort of hazard of sort of why space travel is so dangerous is sort of the variance of gravity sort of astronauts will sort of encounter. So kind of as we said kind of earlier, kind of the gravity on Earth is kind of perfect for humans because sort of the force pressure on us is like the right amount. But kind of in space, when they're on the ISS, they kind of have to regularly exercise to be able to like have the same sort of effects as Earth gravity, I believe, because sort of you get stretched in space, don't you?
Yeah, you lose bone density in space because obviously there's nothing to obviously keep your muscles in shape. Basically, you have to work out.
Yeah, so you lose
definition, but you get taller though.
bone density, mass.
You get like what point? You get 2 inches taller, and then when you get back to Earth and you get compressed again, it's like you lose 2 inches.
I think another thing which people haven't considered is behavioural issues. So sort of when you cram like small amounts of people in a small space over a long amount of time, kind of no matter kind of how trained they are, like inevitably they'll start clashing over stuff. So sort of when they send people up, they're carefully trained and sort of supported to ensure that they can kind of work effectively as a team for like months or even years.
There's two ways. There's two ways it normally goes, right? They either start trying to kill each other or they start fucking each other. If you need proof of it, go work in an office for a short amount of time.
How would you colonise an alien planet? It's sort of an unnatural habitat, isn't it? So sort of, we're obviously used to certain kind of water, heat, sort of atmosphere, but kind of most alien planets obviously aren't Earth, so it's difficult.
Here's the actual way you do it. Probably end up building an outpost or probably some kind of orbital station, and then slowly working your way down once you've got actual, records of what the weather and climate are like.
Intelligently, you'd send probes down and just get as much information as you can before you even think about sending a person.
How would we get food on an alien planet?
It would probably be grown in human basements, so probably in the spaceship.
There's a company in China that has started growing, that has created smart farms, if you've heard of them.
I think
they use certain lights to convince, like certain light patterns and colours can like make vegetables grow quicker and more like efficiently. Like that's one of the plans that they want to do for space travel. So that's one way that you could get food there, is if they just grow it in the base. The other one is finding shit that isn't poisonous on the planet. Although that'd be done through a scientist, not some idiot running around just eating and licking everything. I imagine there'd be one fucking tit does that.
I think probably what we spoke about earlier, sort of in the long term, is kind of, it's either having a sort of a biodome or you've gone down sort of the terraform route, which, as we know, takes an unspecified amount of time, but I think it's just otherwise known as sort of mass amounts of climate change. It's just obviously either trying to heat the planet or kind of cool the planet or do something to the planet to cool. What about energy farming?
The approach sort of being recommended, I mean not just for other planets but for Earth as well, is to effectively build very large orbital towers, and basically you would put them just above the Earth in geostationary orbit, and then you'd build a bunch of solar panels out and direct them towards the sun, and then you would send electricity down the cables to, a giant plant at the base of the tower, distribute it that way.
So we said sort of the general way to sort of power all our technology on sort of an alien planet is through sort of solar farming.
Probably going to be solar because it's the easiest to set up. Obviously, we could do geothermal, but it requires us to be on, a planet with, the capacity to do it. There's a bunch of ways it could happen, and we're assuming aliens are going to be humanoid. Aliens could be like things with like 8 legs and an amorphous sort of body, or it could be like a microbe
or a big blob.
Yeah,
I did think that. To be fair, I think there are aliens out there. It's just, as you said, sort of either sort of at a microscopic level, sort of bacteria on sort of an alien soil or alien dust. I reckon
is when people think of aliens, they think of obviously little green men and grey matter sort of looking, big heads, big black eyes. Or if it's very weirdly shaped aliens.
Do you reckon aliens have ever come to Earth, or do you reckon everybody who's said they've had an alien encounter is a liar?
Imagine they have interacted, but I think they find the planet the way it is, with the people on it as they are. I don't think they want to sort of expose themselves yet, because the sort of nature of people as they are right now would be just to take advantage of them or to kill them and not to understand.
It's like, you ever seen the film National Lampoon's Vacation? game, the first one, and they
I
drive
have
through the
not,
bad
no.
neighborhood and they have two windows. Basically, like, they are that neighborhood. That's why the aliens don't come unless they absolutely have to. They just wind up the windows.
Come eventually, but it's just going to take a lot of time. But when when people meet aliens, they'll be fine. Or
Apart from the probing.
or we take the kingdom.
Can we talk briefly about that? Why is it with sci-fi? Why are they obsessed with aliens probing humans?
Because they assume aliens want to know everything about humans, so instead of asking them or asking humans if they have any books on their physiology and biology, no, we just stick a big metal rod up your ass. That will tell us everything we need to know.
What can you possibly learn
These
from
aliens-
a human are?
Well, I actually think that the reason behind it is written it wants his wife to be a bit more experimental, and that was his way of portraying it. Like, honey, let's watch my new episode.
I'd imagine aliens are weird, or they're just very horny, and they just like things.
Probably a combination of the two. You don't think they just sit there in the ship going, should we go fuck a monkey? Go on, it'd be funny. And then there's that one
I mean,
friend that's like really drunk and he just goes too far with the rod.
God.
Yeah, that went fucked up quick, didn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, it's a language because imagine, meeting an alien for the first time and it communicates in English. It would blow your mind.
The chances of that being real.
It's convenient that, was it all, in science fiction, that every single alien seems to speak really perfect English, but with a slightly different accent.
There is
Probably American.
like the language, like we would standardise language, and typically most universal basic seems to be English. But
Mainly
that's
because
not
we
exactly
just
a
kind of
far-
bastardized everything.
It's easy to communicate in English because most English speakers are quite ignorant and won't learn another language. Whereas everyone else, oh yeah, we'll just learn English, sure. And then not realising that actually, because they're doing that, they're more likely to actually learn English. So in 2 generations, might not even be different languages, everyone might just speak English.